White Monster is the breakfast of champions, but no, I'm not sponsored. In fantasy football, a lot of the experts and rankings that we follow usually don't always often update throughout the season. Granted, there will be injuries that do make these experts go back and change some of their rankings over player X over player Y. But in terms of getting a pulse of the people of who is being drafted more frequently and who is exceeding their ADP and having a significant ADP change, the rankings don't do that. So if on your printed out card when you go to draft next month, the guy that's wide receiver 35, he's not going to look any less or more appealing than 34 36. In your mind, you're going to say, these are the guys. They're all kind of in the same tier. But what we're going to do today on this channel is we're going to talk about the 5 biggest ADP changes in terms of who is going before their ADP. It's important to know who is going before their ADP or who's seeing the biggest ADP changes, because then us drafters, when it comes down to next month or whenever you have your fantasy drafts, your home leagues, you will be prepared to reach if you really want a certain guy, or know that the market says this guy is going sooner than he should. So maybe if I see him at his ADP basically before the changes, I know that I'm getting a good value on this player. So I will be doing a deeper investigation and taking a look at from June 1st to July 22nd when I'm recording this video, who has the biggest ADP change in terms of ADP rising. But that's enough yapping for one intro. Let's get to it. Coming in at the 5th highest ADP change, again, since June 1st to the day I'm recording, that would be Isiah Pacheco of the Kansas City Chiefs, who comes in currently as the running back 11 on Underdog. His ADP change from June 1st to today is just over 4 draft spots ahead than when he was originally going. So if you're in a 10-man league, that's basically half the round. So he was going at, maybe the back of the 4th, to now you're going to have to take him at the front of the 4th if you want him. Or if you're in a 12-man league, you may have to go to the back of the 3rd because he's not going to last in the front of the 4th. And if you are somebody that's going with the draft strategy of grabbing 2 wide receivers before you even get the opportunity to take a running back, I think you can feel pretty good about taking Isiah Pacheco, especially with the performance that he was able to put together last season. He was drafted as basically RB2, RB3 territory and bounced into RB1 territory by the end of the season. And again, I understand that last season is not a deterrent or a dictation on what is going to happen in 2024. However, somebody like Isiah Pacheco did not gain any significant workload competition. I don't care if Kadarius Toney is taking running back reps. Isiah Pacheco is still the starter by a landslide and was able to perform when he was that guy last season in the same offense. Not to mention that this is an offense that will score touchdowns and will have plenty of opportunities to score touchdowns. So getting a value like this in, late 3rd, early 4th round is still a good value. Coming up 4th in terms of ADP change has just gotten over 4.5, so his ADP change is 4.6 from June 1st to now today when I'm recording this video. I've seen a lot of TikToks and other short media forms telling us to stay away from this player, though I've made it clear that I am a big proponent of this player, and his ADP rise says so too. That would be Terry McLaurin, wide receiver of the Washington Commanders, who comes in at wide receiver 31 currently on Underdog. Now, what we do know about Terry McLaurin in 2023 was that he had piss-poor quarterback play and just below average offensive line play. And no, the offensive line play is not going to upgrade much more than, below average. Maybe they'll get to above average or right at the average line. That's realistic. But there's clearly an upgrade in quarterback play with Jaden Daniels over Drake May, who was somebody who threw as many touchdowns as they did interceptions last season. Yes, look that up. I'm not lying. In terms of chain of command or who's going to get a bulk of the targets in this offense, let's look at the entire receiving room for what it is. Austin Eckler is a receiving running back, so that for sure can eat into his workload. We have Jahan Dotson, who, since he's been into the league, not only has he struggled to kind of play every single game this season, but he's somebody that, strikes lightning in a bottle, and he's not going to get 10, 12 targets in a game, but he'll beat you down the field for a 50, 60-yard touchdown, or, have one play where he makes an incredible 40-yard completion with the quarterback. But there's nobody here that's going to eat away from Terry McLaurin, who has proven time and time again. His worst season was definitely last season in 2023, and that leaves a sour taste for owners that had him last year. However, you cannot use last season as a dictation on this season, in that Terry McLaurin is going to continue to regress, because he's not even in an age threshold where he should be regressing. It's more so the Commanders were so poor on offense last season that he had no choice but to finish the worst of his career, wide receiver 31, which is exactly where you'll get him this season, even if you reach for him. So despite, prior to June 1st, it might have costed you an early 5th or a late 4th round pick to get Terry McLaurin, now it's going to take you a middle 4th round pick to get Terry McLaurin. But considering he's still going after about 29 to 30 wide receivers go before him, it's a no-brainer that you should be willing to take Terry McLaurin at this price tag, just sheerly off the fact that he's going to get consistent volume. Up next with the third highest ADP change now, another wide receiver, as they're all going to be wide receivers from here on out. It's the most volatile position, so it makes the most sense. That would be Christian Kirk of the Jacksonville Jaguars. And here's what's tricky about Christian Kirk. Over the last few seasons, no matter who has been in this offense, whether he was with Calvin Ridley, was not with Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk always looked like Trevor Lawrence's favorite. But now, if you want Trevor Lawrence's favorite wide receiver in an offense that may not produce at a very high level in terms of fantasy, it's going to cost you an early 4th round pick, or if you got to reach for him in a 12-man, that might be your late 3rd. So I'm kind of off that value, to be honest with you. It's not that Christian Kirk isn't a good player, and I'm not saying don't take him in the middle of the 4th if he's there in the middle of the 4th. But if you have to go early 4th round, or you have to reach late 3rd round to get him, I don't think that's worth it at all. He is wide receiver 30, but however, there are still 2 more wide receivers on this list that I would advise going after and reaching for. If you had to reach for any of them, you're on the clock, there's 15 seconds, you're about to panic, you don't know what to do, you're staring at your laptop trying to Google current, health statuses of these players. Just don't reach on Christian Kirk. If he falls to you, absolutely take it for the reasons I said. Christian Kirk is Trevor Lawrence's favorite target. Let's not dispute that. You could throw Gabe Davis in this offense. You could throw Brian Thomas Jr. in this offense. It doesn't matter. He's going to throw it to Christian Kirk because their connection when Kirk is running in the slot and getting open in the middle of the field is one of the best to see, honestly, in football. It's one of the best modern-day connections we have in the league. And before you say, what about Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow and Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jared Goff? Just talking about from the slot. I'm not saying that Christian Kirk is an elite wide receiver. I'm not saying that. I am saying when Christian Kirk is running routes in the slot, they are a dynamic tandem, and they are very good for fantasy football. But moving on, before all the keyboard warriors come after me, the next wide receiver on this list just left Jacksonville and is the newly Tennessee Titan. Coming in at wide receiver 35 is Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley's ADP has basically changed in a rising way, just about the same as Christian Kirk's. They're both at 5.5. Calvin Ridley ekes him out at 5.6. of an ADP jump from June 1st to today. But being that I can get Calvin Ridley later significantly, whereas Christian Kirk, I'm going to have to reach in the late third if I really want him, because there's no guarantee early fourth round in a 12-man that he's going to be available. Whereas Calvin Ridley started going at the front of the fifth, and now I could get him at the back of the fourth. You know, if we're comparing apples and oranges here, and I get to save $1 or $2 on my apple versus the orange in the earlier round, I'm going to go budget here, and I'm going to say Calvin Ridley is the better wide receiver to reach on versus Christian Kirk. That doesn't mean that I have Calvin Ridley absolutely finishing higher in fantasy over Christian Kirk. But if we're talking about what it's going to cost you to get either one of these receivers, if I can sneak in a potential opportunity to grab an elite tight end because I waited one more round to take Calvin Ridley over Christian Kirk, or if I can get the quarterback that I love, let's just say, or just upgrade the team in any other way because I waited one more round to take a receiver, then I would feel really good about waiting on Calvin Ridley versus going after Christian Kirk a little too early. But now on the other side of this argument, things are going to be tricky for Calvin Ridley this season, and that's why he's wide receiver 35 and Kirk is the wide receiver 30. We have no idea really who is going to play the majority of the games at quarterback. Very well could be Will Levis, but Malik Willis is still on this team. So the idea of you don't know exactly what quarterback you're going to get or what play style you're going to get out of the quarterback because they're so different in their own ways. That is concerning if you want to go reach for Calvin Ridley. But in terms of who has the better skill set, it's obviously Calvin Ridley. So you can kind of feel good about knowing that somebody like Ridley is going to eat up the new DeAndre Hopkins role. And with Hopkins playing aside of him, that also makes Hopkins a really good value. But somebody that's going into their age 32, 33 season, it's probably more likely that if Calvin Ridley, with all of his God-given ability, can outperform in training camp DeAndre Hopkins, that they may start funneling the targets to Ridley versus Hopkins and leave Hopkins to be his bread and butter, which is a designed red zone target that will almost catch anything you throw at him. DeAndre Hopkins personally is not known for the elite ability to route run. He's just more of the perfect contested catch passer. And Calvin Ridley comes in with a little more of a balanced skill tree in terms of running like a 10-yard and in or running a slant. Like, these are more things that Calvin Ridley can do more efficiently. And finally, the biggest ADP jump from June 1st to the day I'm recording right now, this exact second, is Amari Cooper, who's the wide receiver 29 of the Cleveland Browns. And even with this price spike, I still highly advise going after and reaching for Amari Cooper before somebody else gets him. Amari Cooper, prior to June 1st, was middle of the fourth round to the back of the fourth round pick. And now he's pushed himself all the way up to the early fourth and even a late third if you got to reach for him. But to be honest, for somebody that is going to have, I'm not going to say consistent, but good enough quarterback play, despite whoever ends up being under center for most of the season, because, you know, we didn't expect Joe Flacco to be there last year, but things happen. Given the opportunity for volume and quarterback play being, like I said, good enough, he's still worth reaching for in the late third if you had to, or just waiting for him in the early fourth round. Although he's taken at wide receiver 29, I can assure you that there are not 28 more receivers that are going to log the amount of volume that Amari Cooper is going to. And we already know that Amari Cooper, he's not the loudest, flashiest wide receiver. He's not a diva by any means, but he just puts his head down and works. All he's going to do is just continue to be who he's always been. You know, a very smooth route runner, somebody that doesn't get enough praise for what they do every single week in the NFL. But if you're smart enough and you're willing to just reach for the right guys, this would be one of those guys to reach for. And you might have some people in your home league that are looking at the rankings and seeing like, oh, he's wide receiver 29 or he's wide receiver 28. So I could wait and get him. No. You know, because you watch these videos, that Amari Cooper is going before his ADP, and his ADP is rising. So you know that if you really get the opportunity to take him and you really want him, you're going to have to pull the trigger before everybody else, because that's just how fantasy football drafting works. In conclusion, we had 4 wide receivers and 1 running back jump their ADP significantly. Now, in the next video, I'm going to talk about the 5 biggest decreases in ADP value, and you'll be surprised that there's not a single wide receiver in the top 5 that is falling in draft stock. So what does that tell us about the wide receiver position? We're starting to see that, at least on Underdog, the trend of what people are drafting is now take the wide receivers sooner and try to get these budget running backs later. And there are running backs that are slipping in ADP because of that. The players that may have wanted to bolster up and get like 2 really good running backs, like let's just say a Breece Hall and a Travis Etienne. Probably can't happen in a 12-man league, but I'm just throwing out that example. You wanted 2 running backs. Now, everyone's willing to wait on the running backs and take those wide receivers earlier. So, think about that when you go into your home league. A lot of people are going to want wide receiver. So those were the 5 biggest increases in ADP, the ADP risers. The next video, we're going to go over some stinkers. Some guys nobody wants to draft and they keep slipping down the draft boards. Maybe we'll get them as a value. Maybe we won't. I'll talk about who I like and who I don't. But anyways, if you're new to the channel, I just want to say thank you so much for watching. If you like fantasy football content, feel free to throw a like. It goes a really long way in terms of getting my videos out there for other fantasy football connoisseurs or consumers to see. So it would really go a long way if you just hit the like button. Or if you don't like it, hit the dislike button. I don't know. But if you're new to the channel and you do like this stuff and you don't want to give me a thumbs down, I would really appreciate that option. Just feel free to hit the subscribe button. It's somewhere down here. I usually don't get it right, but I think I got it right this time. But anyways, my name is Turtle. I'm signing out. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Peace.